Hello everyone and welcome back to another AFL Fantasy Fanatics video on the channel. It is Thursday and as always time for some captains ahead of round 19. Captains last week weren't very good. Our top five were very disappointing. Obviously a couple of injuries there impact that. Obviously Dacos had that bit of that ankle tweak and not a great score in a good matchup. Zach Merritt was okay, but 102 with a bit of a tag after halftime wasn't ideal, but still with a ton, it's okay. But there, Nick Martin, obviously, with the injury, unfortunately, for him early in the game, just with the 18 there. Grundy was a good one, 126 at number 4, and then Rosie at 5, with obviously just a 58. So not a great week last week for captains, but we're still top 10 in Captain's Challenge. Captains have still been pretty good for the season. But yeah, the Whitfield one a few weeks ago being at number 2, and Nick Martin obviously last week. A couple of injury-impacted players in the top 5 has meant that we've lost a bit of ground. But hopefully we can stay in the top 10 and pick out some good captains for you in round 19. So let's get things going with our top 10 for round 19. And we'll start off at number 1. And we have got the Ruck Pigs sitting at number 1. Brady Grundy is my number 1 pick this week. Up against North Melbourne on Saturday, the twilight game at the SCG. Like, you look at the scale for Rucks, and it's a red matchup. Not a good matchup. But that's with Tristan Cherry. He's obviously not going to be there. He's obviously with that suspension for 3 weeks. So Grundy's going to be going up against, from what it sounds like, Callum Coleman-Jones, but it could also be a Bryn Teakle, and then likely one of Finn Barmali or a Jack Darling chopping out, unless they bring in both Teakle and Callum Coleman-Jones. But in that case, it's not going to matter. This is a great matchup for Brady Grundy, who is killing it at the moment. 9 scores in a row over 110 points. And let's just lift off some of these scores, right? The great scores like 111. 115, 111, 134. That was against Max Gawn. 124 against Riley O'Brien. 139, 121, 137, 113, 126. That is fantastic over the last 9 weeks, averaging over 120 in that period. And yeah, I just think he's going to get it done. 83 and 110 in his last 2 games against North Melbourne, but I'm not reading a huge amount to that because that's been with Tristan Cherry playing against him. So Grundy is my number 1 option this week in a great matchup, and hopefully a lot of us can VC him if you've got him in your team. Coming in number 2 is the Adelaide captain, Jordan Dawson, is at number 2 up against Gold Coast. Final game of the round at Adelaide Oval. His form against Gold Coast has been a little bit up and down last 5. So 118, 89, 98, 128, 118. But that 118 was against Gold Coast earlier this year at People First Stadium. This one's going to be back at home where we know Dawson can have some big scores. So some scores Omi's had this year: 126, 85 against North Melbourne, 92 against Geelong. 123 against the Giants, 122 against Carlton, 78 with a Berman tag against Port, 139 against West Coast, 109 against Brisbane with a Dunkley tag, and then a 94 against Melbourne. So some big scores there, and obviously the lower ones are more due to having a tag. I think the North Melbourne one was the only one that was low that I'm not sure what happened really with that one there. But John Dawson, obviously number 1 averaging mid this year with averaging over 110, and I think he's a good captain option in the final game of the round. And last 5 against Gold Coast against midfielders haven't been as easy. They're actually a little bit more of a negative matchup. So still about average for a matchup for midfielders. But we saw what Zach Merritt did a couple of weeks ago against them with a 145. And if you go to the last 10, they are a green matchup with only Essendon and North Melbourne giving up more points to inside mid. So I still think it's a great matchup. And I think Jordan Dawson is a very good option. So he's my number 2. Coming in at number 3 is Errol Gordon against North Melbourne, and that's same game against Grundy in that twilight game on the Saturday. Errol Gordon's last 2 scores against North Melbourne, so he had a 151 against them last year, and then a 106 before that. They're his 2 recent scores against them. And again, North Melbourne have been a great matchup for midfielders, as I mentioned earlier. Sorry, no, I didn't mention it earlier. So I recorded this and then a mistake happened, so we had to re-record because of the computer. Thanks for that. But in terms of midfielders, North Melbourne obviously giving up plenty of points. So they're equal West Coast over the last 5, and only Essendon and Carlton are giving up more points over the last 5 weeks to midfielders. And then over the last 10 weeks, I believe they're the number 1. Yeah, they're the number 1 easiest matchup over the last 10 weeks for midfielders. So I think Errol Gordon's going to get to work. Had a low score of 89 on the weekend, but St Kilda have been trickier for midfielders to score against lately. So I think Gordon is a good option, and he is my number 3 option this week. Coming in at number 4 is Lockie Whitfield. against the Bombers later on tonight. So that could be a massive game for Whitfield. So his last 5 against Essendon aren't amazing. So 77, 102, 100, 112, and 132. But over the last 5 weeks, the Bombers are giving up a heap of points to defenders. I believe over the last 5 weeks, Essendon for defenders, and specifically rebound defenders, which obviously that is what Whitfield is, I believe is it's the number 2 matchup in all of fantasy, besides Rucks against St Kilda, funny enough, is the easiest matchup going around. But yeah, defenders and rebound defenders against Essendon, giving up plus 23 points a game. And that would be, is that going to be the same over the last 10 weeks as well? A little bit less, but still a great matchup there. And is it just Rucks against St Kilda? Well, Rucks against St Kilda is essentially giving up the exact same. So it's an amazing matchup there. The only slight flag I want to raise here is Matt Guelfi's been named, and I read out that 77 that Whitfield scored against the Essendon last year. That was when Guelfi went to him with a little bit of attention. So just a flag that could happen, but in saying that Essendon are so depleted, the game could get out of hand quickly. Are they going to persist with the tag, or are they just going to let it go? So I think that's probably more likely what's going to happen. Maybe Guelfi starts on him, but I'd expect Whitfield to junk it up as the game goes on and get to a really good score. So I'm not too concerned about the Whitfield attention, but just something I thought I'd raise if you're sort of wondering why, because the matchup probably means he should be at 2 or 3. Just bump down a couple of spots just with that potential for attention there. And at number 5, rounding out my top 5, is Bailey Smith against the Saints. So the Saints have been a tricky matchup for the season. They are still about neutral for midfielders over the last 10 weeks. And last 5 weeks, what have they been? They've been a little bit more tougher for inside mids, but they've actually been giving out a lot to outside mids. Obviously, that was why a few of us thought Errol Gordon was going to go big last week. So they're plus 10.8 points to outside mids. And we know Baz does a lot of his work on the outside. So I think it's actually a decent matchup for Bailey Smith against the Saints. And obviously he's been the number 1 averaging player across the season, averaging just under 120. But his last few have been a little bit quiet. So 94 and 98. But before that, 136, 147, 126, 123, 149, 119, 132. I think he'll get back to some good form. Obviously, the only flag with Baz is, does he get attention? But I think that Max Holmes is more likely to cop the attention from a Windhager or a Hugo Garcia, or maybe they go Garcia to Smith and they go Windy to Holmes the same. But Windy hasn't been tagging, and Garcia's been just doing a little bit of a run with Rob. It hasn't really been he's done a little bit, but not a huge amount. So I think Baz can still get it done in this matchup at GMHBA, where we know he's put up plenty of big scores. The game against Brisbane, 94, was the only time Baz has gone below 125 at GMHBA this year. So I think that Baz is in for a good score and a bounce back from a couple of sort of subpar gains for Baz's standards for this season. Moving through 6 through 10. At number 6, I've got Rowan Marshall. And this is probably a little bit to do with if Max Heath is named or not, because Rowan Marshall's record against Geelong is fantastic. He's gone over 118 in his last 5 against against Geelong. 142, 131, 118, 141, 118. Absolutely getting it done and smashing it against Geelong. And Geelong are still a very good matchup for Rucks. Only the Dogs, Saints, Freo and Essendon are giving up more points to Rucks, but they are a very, very good matchup there. Dark green for Rucks. So I think Marshall can get it done. The slight flag obviously is with Max Heath in the team, but Marshall still had a lot more of the CBAs than I think what people are thinking from last week. So he still had 21 CBAs to Max Heath's 9. Just had a couple of short stints, a few stints forward. I still think Marshall can get it done even with Max Heath in the team, but if Heath is named, he may drop to 7 or 8, because I do like a couple of these options towards the bottom part of the 10. Tom Green is at number 7. So he's up against, obviously, Essendon tonight. And Essendon obviously giving up a heap of points to a lot of positions there. And they are a great matchup, again, for inside mid. So plus 10.7 points over the last 5 weeks for midfielders. So I think Tom Green is finally going to put up a good score. Obviously, he's been pretty quiet over the last few weeks and would not have been anywhere near captains. He's since he went to 133 against Geelong, he's gone 78, 85, 112, 109, 78, 119, 104, 79. But the 2 scores over 110 have been against Richmond and Gold Coast. So in good matchups, he can get it done. And I think this is going to be a game where Tom Green does go well. So Tom Green is my number 7 pick in captains. Number 8, I've got Josh Dunkley. So where's Josh Dunkley at here? So down here. Against the Dogs, not great. Oh, actually, I should have said about Tom Green. 98, 120, 111 in his last 3 against Essendon. But yeah, Josh Dunkley, 98, 79, and 116 in his 3 games since moving from the Dogs. And the Dogs aren't a great matchup, but I think this is a game that's going to really suit Josh Dunkley. Really tight, contested game. I think there'll be plenty of tails. I think he'll go head-to-head with like a Bont. There, we saw what Dawson was able to do last week against sort of head-to-head with Bont with a 129. I think that Josh Dunkley can get it done and put up a good score on Friday night. 2 of his last 3 have been really good scores, right? He went 137 last week against Carlton, 78 against Port, not great, but then a 124 against Geelong before that. So 2 of his last 3 have been good, and I think he could be a good VC option with a ceiling if you're going to go for a high ceiling play into maybe a Grundy or a Dawson or a Gordon captain. At number 9, I've got Dane Zorko, obviously Dunkley's teammate against the Dogs. So the Dogs have been giving up a few more points to defenders. They're actually a positive matchup now, which early in the year they weren't. So over the last 5 weeks, only Richmond, Essendon, and Carlton are giving up more to rebounding defenders than the Dogs. So I do like this matchup for Zorko. 90, 96, and 62 in his last 3. So the 62 not great, but I think Zorko's going to have a really good game here. Plenty of kick-ins. Plenty of touches down in defence, and I think he's going to go well. His last few scores, 104, 79, not great, but then a 124, 114 before the bye against the Geelong and Giants, which aren't great matchups. And he's had Port and Carlton was obviously a better matchup. That could have been a 120 against Carlton last week, but he did rest the last 5 minutes on the bench. So I think Zorko's in for a good game here. And I've got Andrew Brayshaw rounding out the top 10 up against Collingwood, which obviously isn't a great matchup. We know Collingwood have been tougher this for mids just in general this year. They are about sort of neutral to slightly greenish, but more neutral. But Brayshaw's last 5 against Collingwood have been great. 119, 109, 110, 127, 111. So getting it done, and we know how good Brayshaw has been this year. 138 last week was obviously fantastic. And just getting it done as the second highest averaging midfielder for the season. And obviously played Collingwood earlier this year, and that was where he scored the 119. So I think he is another guy that could be in for a good score there. I haven't actually been showing you guys, and I've been looking at my phone with the stats and stuff. But yes, I do like Andrew Brayshaw rounding out my top 10. Just to go through a couple of options here that I didn't touch on in the top 10 and why they aren't in the top 10. So Nasai Wanganeen-Miller is there. I just think Geelong are the team. They're gonna put attention to him. I just can't see Nasai running around free against Geelong, so that's why he's not in the top 10. But he will be in the top 10, I'm sure, for a number of other weeks to round out the season with some good matchups for the Saints. Matt's gone against Carlton. A tricky matchup against Carlton. Pitney and DeConey have been a tough matchup. So if Pitney was to be dropped, I don't think they're going to drop him because he's actually been quite, I think the stats and stuff say that Pitney's actually getting it done in the ruck. Then I'm probably not looking at Gawn just with the matchup this week, but we know Gawn on any given day can go big. So just not this week for me. I'm just trying to look here. So Carlton are, they're tougher than Adelaide and Brisbane over the last 5 weeks. Only Melbourne, North Melbourne, and then Sydney are the 3 tougher matchups for Rucks. So even Gold Coast are giving up almost they're giving up about the same points as, actually no, it's 2 points difference, so not the same points. But anyway, they are a tough matchup. Lockie Ash could be someone you look at against the Bombers. He was probably unlucky to miss the top 10. The only reason I just didn't have him on top 10 is that he's only had the one score of 120 plus this year, and that wasn't even counting for us. That was in opening round against Collingwood when he had that 99-point second half. But he's just been really consistent. We just really solid tons. Like he's tonned up in every game since round 9. So what's that? 2, 4, 6, 8 tons in a row, getting it done. You could definitely go worse with a VC. So I think Ash is a solid VC shout for tonight. Bont, I just think you'll get a bit of attention from whether it's a Dunkley or even a Berry who's done the job in the past. I just wouldn't be going there this week, but we know Bont is in form. 3 of his last 4 have been over 120, including that 166 last week. So could be a VC shout, but I think there are better options this week. Nick Dacos, I think he'll get the Wagner tag this week, and he scored his, I think, was lowest score of the season with a 67 against Freo in round 9. But Freo have been normally a team he's actually scored quite well against. In the other 3 games, he went quite well. So we'll see, obviously, if he gets to some good form. Like in the other games there, he was... I'm just trying to get his average in the other 3 games. So he was actually averaging about 113 in his 3 games. So normally a good record. And we'll see how he goes. But I think he gets the Wagner tag. But it is at the G, so probably a little bit better than Optus. Nank, good for draft. Against West Coast, could be an option. I don't think many in Classic will have got him there, but could be someone this week, but just hasn't been the same Nank that we've seen for a lot of the year, just with Richmond struggling a little bit more. Noah Anderson against the Crows, another one that's probably unlucky to miss, but I know that Adelaide are a trickier matchup for midfielders. And being at home, it's probably for the Crows, and away for Gold Coast, it's probably not a great matchup, but I think Anderson can still get it done, but I just think there are better options this week. Harry Sheezer against Sydney. Wouldn't be shocked if he got attention, but it's a tough matchup anyway, so I'm just not looking for Sheezel this week. Finn Callaghan could be someone that goes quite well, so if you've got him as a unique, he could be someone you put the VC on. He's shown a bit more of a ceiling this year with some bigger scores. Merritt, obviously not looking there this week against the Giants. Tough matchup. Whether Bedford goes to him or not, I'm not expecting a massive score from Merritt, which I'd like to be wrong, obviously as an owner. I just don't think he'll get a big score this week, so I'm not looking at him as a VC. I think there are much better options in that game. Or after Max Holmes, I think there's attention coming his way this week. But if not, he could put up a good score. But I think better options for captain this week. And yeah, Rouse obviously getting it done, but probably not against the Crows. I wouldn't be looking at as captain. Tim Taranto in draft would be a good one, and could even be someone in if you got him in Classic as a VC. If you want to go really unique, or go Grundy into Taranto, maybe is something. But besides that, that's probably the options there this week, and anyone I haven't chatted about, I wouldn't be looking at. So my plans this week, I'm going Brady Grundy, VC, on debut, and going Jordan Dawson, captain, on the Sunday. So that's my current plans at the moment. I've got Harry Boyd as my red dot. So just check your red dots this week to make sure you guys have got a red dot after. But I know a lot of people have got some there. So just check you've got a red dot playing after, because I think I've only got Boyd and Bustlinger as the 2 red dots at the moment, which is a little bit frustrating. I'd like a one after that. So, but yes, that is where we're currently sitting at there. So Grundy into Dawson for me this week. But let me know in the comments below, guys, who you guys are going with your captain and vice captain in round 19. I'm interested to know what you guys are doing with those this week. And as always, smash a big thumbs up on the video. That'd be very, very much appreciated. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We're trying to get 5K subscribers. I think we're about 20 or so away from 4,100. So if you can hit subscribe, make sure you do. We've still got plenty of content, daily content for the remainder of the season. But then we'll also be doing AFLW content, which I'm looking forward to starting in over the next couple of weeks, which is really, really exciting. So if you haven't tried that AFLW Fantasy out, please do. It's good fun. Get involved with it there as well. If you'd like to become a Patreon member as well, patreon.com/AFL Fantasy Fanatics. You get a free team review every single week by being a Patreon member. Also, you get access to the Patreon Q&As every week. And you get a guaranteed answer from me to all your questions, because I can't always get to YouTube comments or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. Can't, unfortunately, get to all of them because there's so many questions that come through. So if you do want a guaranteed answer to your question and all the other stuff that comes along with it, patreon.com/AFL Fantasy Fanatics. The link is in the description of the video if you'd like to become part of that. So thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll be live later on tonight for another watch along for the Giants and Essendon game at this stage, and then we'll be live tomorrow night, both for our pre-lockout chat, 6 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. per time, as always, and then we'll also be doing another watch-along for Brisbane and the Dogs, which will be a really good game. Looking forward to that one. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Enjoy the footy tonight. Hopefully catching the watch-along. If not, catch you guys tomorrow for a pre-lockout chat and another watch-along. So thanks everyone. Have a good night. See ya.